Let's see if we're on. Let's see. All right, so just keep that on me now because I'm live. Oh, I got it. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Microphone check. Okay, cool. Thank you, Dave. Okay. Good. Jerry, nice. Good to see you. Sorry I didn't get to write you back today, Jerry. I got your text, the cool dog. Cool dog you're training. Crazy day for me. All right, welcome everybody back to the stream. Thanks for the patience. We've been out for 2 weeks. We're doing a little bit different angle today. We're in the old training room because we're going to be talking about phase 1 obedience. If we have some technical difficulties, let me know. We have different wiring set up. Everything's a little bit different in here. We haven't been in this room since the first stream, and I definitely had issues during the first couple of streams. But it looks like we have things set. I got Darcy with me today, so she'll be helping us out in today's stream. Just for some review, if any of you are new, is you want to start off in, let's see, where it says start here in the classroom and go to the beginning of the stream. We'll do a quick, I'll do a quick review of everything for you, where we should be at. So right over here for anyone new and review for all of us, what we're going to do is today is we are going to be doing an intro to Layer 9. Layer 9 training actually gets divided up into a few more layers, and what we're going to be doing is phase 1 training today. If you start from the beginning, you want to remember to start at the beginning because everything builds upon the next layer in this training system. You know, so ethology is going to be understanding the behavior of the dog. If we understand the behavior of the dog first, then it's going to help us to recognize potential health issues and how health can affect the training. If we understand those things, we can make diagnosis on the problems that we are having to help us shape our plan. That leads to attitude. Only if we understand the dog can we have the right attitude. If we have the right attitude, it will lead to our behaviors. If we have the wrong attitudes, like if we just think a dog is a jerk, we're going to treat the dog like a jerk, and we do not want that, right? If we understand the dog is acting a certain way because it's fearful or it's dominant or because it was bred to do that, of course our training plan is going to take the right shape right from the beginning. We need to know how to manage our dog to keep it out of trouble during the training process and our applied behavior analysis. Everything has to be technical and go to standards that do work not only for animals but also for humans. Our leadership, this is, we want to understand this because this gets us making the decisions for the group, which will naturally shape into habitation. You know, we're going to micromanage the dog, and through that we can work on housebreak and anxiety issues and things like that. That brings us to our training, right? So training is step 9, and training involves everything. Training involves any type of communication that you're doing to a dog or really any animal to teach them new behaviors. Now, we divide the training into typically really into 3 phases for the most part. And by chunking the training like this, it just helps give us more of a compass. Something that you can follow along with will be if you go onto, if you're on the site and you go into the knowledge base, you will find, let me see where, okay. If you go on the knowledge base, you can find an obedience chart. Okay, so we have our obedience chart, and it's here. And what we're going to go over today is mostly the stuff, see it says phase 1. And you can click on phase 1, it gives us some more details of what phase 1 is and what it is not. And we're just going to give like an overview of what phase 1 is about. Now there's also a phase 2 and there's a phase 3. So we have it on the obedience chart, and you can also click through little pieces of it over here, the little where it says lesson. This is going to be self-explanatory once I start showing you things. You can also sort of see like what we'd call like the printable version. If you just went to the About Canine 1, you know, this is an obedience chart too. So we're going to be working here in phase 1 to give you an overview of what it's about. So what this is about is giving an overview, and then we can always dive deeper into all these different concepts here. All right. So let's click back over to me. All right. Now, phase 1 training this is how I start really all dogs in training for any exercise. What I have here is I have Darcy. She's a bit of a mess. It's dusty out here. She's a Portuguese water dog, and I use her. This is actually one of my work dogs. I bring her to the career school, and I have her for the students. There's like 47 students there, divided into 2 classes. I mostly use her because she's a rambunctious little girl, and she's the perfect size for them to practice doing things like lifting her on tables, taking pulses. Her hair keeps growing, so they're constantly like shaving her and brushing her. So she's sort of like their hands-on dog where they do all kinds of things. She has some cookies in her eyes. She has not been, I've let them play with like phase 1 training. I have not personally really done that much training with her. She's a student dog. She goes to work, she comes back, and then she's pretty much relaxing once she gets back over here. If you look at her, she has just a plain, very dirty pink collar on from playing in the mud all day and pretty much most of the time. She has these cookies that really annoy me. I got to get out. So there's no type of specific training collar on her. There's no prong collar, no star mark, no choker collar. It's just a buckle collar. And what phase 1 training is about is, if we go back and we remember our operant conditioning, is we're really, when we're talking about phase 1 training, we are only working with positive reinforcement and negative punishment. It means it's the given and taken away with rewards. Now, once you sort of like understand everything that I'm teaching, it does not necessarily mean that everything you teach a dog has to start off like this. You can see you can do a lot of things at the same time, and you can kind of jump around, which it's going to make sense to you as we move along, especially for the experienced trainer that knows what they're doing. But as a rule, if I'm working with a client, I always focus on the phase 1 training first to make sure they master the concepts, at least for each individual exercise, before I move over to phase 2 training. Phase 2 training is when I start teaching them how to utilize positive punishment and negative reinforcement, and some other concepts. So that is one of the reasons why we understand what operant conditioning is, because if we don't really understand what operant conditioning is, it's easier to get lost when we start going into phase 1, phase 2 training. So we're like, are we in phase 1? Are we in phase 2? So I'm going to purely work in phase 1 training with her. Now, the little steps of phase 1 training, and you can see how this works with any exercise, is the first step is really just marking. That's one of the first things that I teach anyone with their dog, is the concept of just marking a behavior. So marking a behavior is just identifying that behavior that you want from the dog, and then making sure the dog knows that that was good at that exact moment. We will, probably next lesson will be a good time to go into classical conditioning, which is really easy. Classical conditioning is basically compared to operant conditioning, where it's cause and effect. We do something and we get like a reward or we get punishment, and we have some sort of control over those consequences. Classical conditioning is much simpler. It's like automatic learning. It doesn't really matter what you do, it's just going to automatically happen. Like for instance with her, if I tell her good girl, she looks at me, I'm going to give her a treat, or I'm going to give her love. She was classically conditioned to understand that when I say that, something good happens to her. So I say good girl, and she's going to have a good emotional response. She's going to wag her tail, and she knows it's love or treats or a toy, right? And that usually comes pretty natural to most dogs. Markers can be I use mostly praise, because I like to talk very naturally to the dog. I usually say good girl, then I give the dog love. She's going to get her belly rubbed. But markers are also saying the word yes. You see a lot of trainers say yes, and then like they give a dog, some sort of treat. Or a clicker is a marker. So anything that you're letting the dog know, that is what I want you to do, is going to be a marker, right? But that is classical conditioning, because good girl technically means nothing to a dog until it is paired with something, right? Good girl. See, so she hears me even say the word good girl, and she gets an emotional response to that, right? And she wants to play. Now, if I'm doing phase 1 training, technically in pure phase 1 training, there is no sort of positive punishment. So you see this little maniac, she wants to bite the leash. If I'm doing pure phase 1 training, I am not going to add something to discourage that. But what I could do is I could try to encourage the right behaviors, right? So I don't want her chewing this, and instead I tell her something like, Darcy, sit. Good girl, and I mark the behavior. I'm going to give her love, and I'm going to give her a treat right now. So I'm not going to punish her for that, but I'm going to direct her to something else that's going to be rewarding. Now, if I was getting a lot of this leash pulling, that is why habitation is lower in our foundation, because I would say to myself, oh, I should schedule some play around this time, which she is a very playful dog, all right? So that would be lower in the foundation. And of course, phase 2 would be very easy to punish that behavior. And you'll see we'll be doing that very, very soon. But I'm going to go through some of these, show you how easy phase 1 training is when you chunk it. So marking is just letting her know anything that you want the dog to do, like sit, good girl, the moment I do it, that's simply marking the behavior. It's getting your dog to do things even without the command. Like if I just lure her into a heel position, good girl, right? I'm telling her, good girl, every time she does something that I want. Whether it's a hand signal, good girl, or I'm giving her a command. So it could be anything. I could ask for her paw, good girl. My timing was off, good girl. All right, I could tell her, speak, Darcy, speak, 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 good girl, all right? Really anything, you get them to do it, good girl, good girl. I love good girl. I love saying good girl and good boy. I am not a fan of yes. I'm not a fan of clickers for dogs, only because this is my opinion and my experience. There's definitely value in those things for certain things that we do with dogs. But for my personal dogs, you can actually add your emotion, you know, to the marker, which is an added bonus, right? So I could tell her good girl, or I could tell her sit. Good girl. I could tell her good girl and add like extra emotion to it. And that's what it's about. You know, we love being with our dog. Now, with marking, remember, marking, it seems really basic. Any behavior you want an animal to do, it's just, how can we get the dog to do that? So suppose we were training her to be in a movie or something, and we needed her to put her paw like on her nose. It's like, how do we get them to do that? The very first step is just to get the dog to do that behavior. Then you can mark it. So you could like put a piece of Scotch tape on her nose, right? And as soon as she does that, we're going to say, good girl, and we mark it, you know. So that is always the first step. But marking generally is going to evolve. Let me see, we got a question here. Is going to involve, hey, we got Mike, we got Carlos, is going to involve prompting. All right? So prompting is anything you do to get the dog to do something. All right? So a prompt can be a lure, which means she's going to follow around the treat. All right? I could do that to get her to a sit. Prompt could also be, I could prompt them, you know, even though she may not know what I'm doing here. All right? Let's say this could be a prompt too. Good girl, to get her into a sit. All right, so prompts take any form, anything you do to encourage the dog to get into that behavior. Like I say, I want a dog to touch its nose, I put a piece of tape, that's a prompt. You need, as long as you can get the dog to do that behavior, then you can mark it. With my students in the school during the day, they're all assigned a rat. I got 25 rats there. All the students are assigned to rats. I'm having just a blast training rats because I love them. It's my second love besides the dogs, where our goal is every student has to teach the rat to do 5 different behaviors, all right? And one of the things I really want them to do is I want rat basketball. I want my own rat basketball team. So we need to get them to pick up a ball, right? So one of the first things they're going to be learning to do is how to mark it. So how do we prompt them to touch a ball? I put them in a little tiny box and there's nothing in there but a ball. And that's a kind of prompting. There's nothing there. It's very easy for them to investigate the ball. And then as soon as they even sniff the ball, it gets marked. In their case, we're using clickers, all right? But with her, we're going to do a dog. So we're going to do praise. So this is all marking. This is the very first step. And you do, when I'm teaching someone, if they do not understand about marking, it's very hard for them to move forward because they're constantly got to be telling the dog when they're doing things right. Me personally, I hate it when I see someone give their dog a command, the dog does it, and they just say nothing, that they don't give the dog feedback. It's a good way to troubleshoot dogs that sometimes you'll see them do a command, then they break because they were like, oh, was that what I was supposed to be doing? And then they get punished for breaking. Where you need to give that dog feedback that they are doing it, all right? Now, when you go on our chart, I put marking there because it's a big step. But within marking, there are a lot of smaller steps that you can dive deeper into, such as if you have a difficult thing for the dog to do, suppose you're trying to get the dog to go into a down position, right? This is a difficult one for a lot of people with dogs. Especially if they have something like a dachshund or something that's already short. They may not be able to get them easily into the position for a down. Good girl, all right? So then they might shape, all right, even before they can do the mark, which it means they just mark a behavior that's close to it. That's close to it. So if they got the dog just bending over a little here, they may say good girl and give the treat. But then they wouldn't give the treat until they came down a little bit further, good girl, and then wait until all elbows hit the ground. It's how I always do. You can get almost any dog to go into a down, even if you can get them into a sit first and their head is just bent over. You just mark them for getting closer to it, then eventually they slip down. Good girl, good girl. You just don't give them, you don't mark them for doing less than that. And that's what shaping is, all right? So shaping is part of marking. It's a prerequisite to doing marking because you may need to shape, all right? The next major box that we have on that chart is, uh-oh, my wire disconnect. Me. I'm sure I didn't disconnect. Let me just test. Hold on, folks. You jumped on my wire. Testing. Okay, I'm good. All right. Is fading. Fading is when, after you got the behavior, fading is when you basically fade off whatever prompt you were doing. Like you see here with Darcy, is I am luring to the ground to get her to go into a down, right? It doesn't even matter if I'm saying down. But now I want to fade off whatever prompt, so she does it for whatever cue I want. If your hand signal, is going to be the cue for her to do it, then that's fine. There's really nothing to fade off of. But if I wanted it to be my voice, if I wanted to just be able to say, Darcy, down, good girl, right? She does it. If I wanted to be able to do that without bending my hand to the ground, you'd have to work on fading, right? So fading is like what it says. It's doing it very slowly. So usually any type of do fading, you're going to do your cue first, right? Like I would say down, then I would go all the way to the ground if she didn't know that. Oh, girl. But then every time I would do it, I would slowly fade away that prompt. So I would say, Darcy, down. Instead of going all the way to the ground, I might go 6 inches off the ground, right? Good girl. And then I may go 8 inches off the ground, all right? Then I would say, Darcy, down, and then go a foot off the ground. Usually with something like down, the hardest part is when the dog has to move away from the treat to complete the down, right about there. Watch this, she's going to have to go, move away, down. This is hard for them. Good girl, right? That's usually like the climax. Once they know, oh, I got to move away from it to complete it. Good girl, right? So the process of fading away from all of these body movements is fading, or fading away from any cue that you use. When I do for the trainer's course, I want people to fade their dog off of all kinds of lures and body language. It does not mean that someone needs to fade their dog off of all body language when they train a dog, or they have to do it with a client. I just like people to do it because it shows you know how to fade off of lures, because it is handy, of course, to not need to use your hands to get a dog to do something. All right, Darcy, sit. Good girl. All right, you want to make sure that they know the difference of these words. Darcy, down. Good girl. Good girl. All right. Now, after you fade, it says interval. Interval and duration can confuse people. All right. And interval I put before duration, and I'll tell you why. When you think of interval, the best way to think of it is basically how often a reward will be available if they happen to be doing the right thing. Duration is basically an extended amount of time, that they have to do a behavior continuously for an extended amount of time to get a reward. So I'll show you the difference between the two, all right? If I'm using an interval is easier. So suppose I'm using, now I tell her sit, good girl, she just has to do it for a moment, fine. But an interval would be, as long as she stays sitting, right now I'm going to give her one reward about, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about every 5 seconds. Now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can extend it, and I can get her doing it longer and longer. Now, if she happens to pop up right now, it does not mean that there will not be a reward available every 8 or 9 seconds. It's just she will not get it if she does not happen to be doing the last thing that I told her to do. All right? And that's what an interval is. So watch, I'll do the same thing with a down. Normally, once I fade it off on the marker, I fade it off on the lure, Darcy, down, good girl. Watch, I'm going to give her like every second. All right? Good girl. Then it will go to like every, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are intervals, and she's being good. She's staying there. But if she happened to get up, I will have one available as long as she's down. She could pop up. See, right now she's not going to get it. But if she happened to be down, they're going to come again. All right? But that's what an interval is. All right, Darcy, down, good girl. Now, I use this a lot when I'm teaching heel command. I love Darcy, free, good girl. Interval is great for heel. Watch this. I love this. This is one of my favorite things. Cool little trick. I have her on the leash so she doesn't knock over the wires and stuff. Like in a group class, if I'm doing like a phase 1, I tell people to put usually their handle like over their elbow like this. So they still have their dog and they could take some treats in their right hand. Now watch what I do with the heel. I'm going to walk around the room. I have to change. I'll change this camera angle so we get the room here. Now, so first I'm going to mark her for going into the heel. Darcy, heel, good girl. All right, good girl. So she's marked her. Now this is an interval. I could talk to you, and as long as she's here, I'm like on like a 5-second interval, maybe. Now, I'm going to move, right? As long as she's there, watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. I'm going to move around. And about every few seconds, as long as she's here, there's a reward. If she happens to move out of place, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to be bringing these over here. So what she learns is that this is the place to be. Nothing bad happens if she's out there. It's just, and she kind of knows this is where the rewards are going to be. So I could relax. This is phase 1. And I can see how far I can push these intervals out. Now, as a rule, and now watch this. I can do everything now. The last thing I tell her to do, as long as she's doing it, there's going to be an interval. So if I watch Darcy climb, good girl, I marked it. Now, as long as she's there, as long as she happens to be there, there's a reward available, right? It doesn't matter if she gets off, It's just she's not getting it until she goes back on, all right? Because that's the last thing that I told her to do. Now, every time she hears her name, that means there's going to be a change, right? Darcy, heel, good girl. I mark it. Now, as long as she's here. Now, watch this. I go, Darcy, sit, good girl. I mark it. As long as she's in the sit, there's going to be rewards coming on her interval. If she doesn't, it's not even a big deal. She just doesn't get it. All right? She's back in there. It's an interval. Now, as an interval is before duration. Duration, as a rule, I only do durations as far as I've been successful with the intervals. Which means now, watch this, I'm going to use less treats. I'm going to tell her, Darcy, climb, good girl. I'm going to mark it. And then I know she can do a 5-second interval. So after 5 seconds, right, I'll give her something else to do. Darcy, heel. She kind of broke there. Good girl. And I'm giving her one reward, basically, at the end of doing an exercise. So she's healing. She has to remain doing this for like 5 seconds. And Darcy, free. She gets a reward. Duration is she has to do it for an extended amount of time. Darcy, heel. Good girl. No reward right away. Darcy, free. All right, she just does one long one. Darcy, heel. Heel, climb. All right, good girl. Darcy, oh, that's okay. Darcy, heel. Good girl. All right, it's just what duration is she just maintains doing it. All right. Now you can, if she doesn't do it, she's not going to get a reward, all right? She just doesn't get a reward if she doesn't for an extended amount of time. Now once you do both of these, you can put them together and you could use different rewards. Like for instance, I can say, Darcy, heel, good girl, and she's getting verbal, good girls. Like every few seconds, good girl. She's getting this verbal reward which she associates with good things. And then Darcy, free. Good girl. So she doesn't get the food reward until after the duration, but I'm going to give her a verbal reward at an interval. So we put them together, we get even better results. So it's actually giving her more feedback. That's Darcy, climb. Good girl. All right, give her love. She wants her food though. Good girl. All right, that's letting her know you're doing good, you're doing good. Darcy, free. Good girl. These are durations. All right, but durations are really easy if you do the intervals. The intervals are great with squirmy little puppies that don't want to stay in the down. You get them in the down, you just treat, 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 and then you start slowing it down. They're popping up and down, it doesn't matter. You just don't release the treat unless they're in the down. Then you slow it down. You slow it down, all right? Now you'll be surprised what happens when you break it down. You can do almost anything like this. Then what happens is then that leads us to our reward schedules. It's how often you do not want to be carrying around treats all over the place to get the dog to do something. But I never completely stop giving them treats. I like to use more love. Now the food rewards are really good for teaching new behaviors, only because you can get so much repetition out of them. So for instance, every time I do a new exercise, or when I teach clients to do new exercises, we tell them to go on what's called a continuous reward schedule. It means every single time, right? So if I'm teaching her new things, right, Darcy, sit, good girl, she gets a treat, all right? Darcy, down, good girl. Darcy, sit. Sit. Oh, she may need to, good girl, she may actually need some fading. I don't know if she knows to go back into the set. Darcy, climb. Good girl. This is a continuous reward schedule. Now, Darcy, free. Now, what you want to do is you want to start moving them to a variable reward schedule. Variable reward schedule, it's, what it is, it's a form of, of an intermittent schedule where they just do not get rewards every time. And there are different types, like fixed ratio, which is like every other time, or every third time. There's different types of ratios. In general, the best for dog training is you want to work towards variable reward schedules. And there's dense variable reward schedules and there's thin variable reward schedules. Now, a dense reward schedule means that they're getting more rewards than not. Let me have more treats. I rarely use a bait bag. I just stick stuff in my back pocket. So usually with a trained dog, I don't need more than like a couple. But in the training process, I usually like just throwing them in my back pocket. Now I'm going to show you an example of a dense reward schedule. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it to her about 2 out of 3 times. So watch this. I'm going to go, Darcy, down, good girl. Darcy, sit, good, sit. Darcy, sit, good girl. I'm going to give it to her there. Darcy, down, good girl. No reward there. Darcy, down, good girl. Darcy, climb. Good girl. So she got it roughly 2 out of 3 times. And as long as I get the enthusiasm out of her, Darcy, heel. Darcy, heel. Good girl. That's 1 time. Darcy, sit. Good girl. No reward there. Darcy, down. Good girl. She gets a reward there. All right. That's a dense schedule, all right? Now, once I start moving, watch, I'm going to give it to her roughly half of the time now, all right? Darcy, climb. Good girl. Darcy, come. Good girl. Darcy, heel. Good girl. She gets it there. Darcy, sit. Darcy, sit. Good girl. Darcy, climb. Good girl. She's getting it about half of the time. All right? Now, once I start moving, she gets it less than, which I don't know if how thin she's been, because usually the students that are training with her, they're just having fun with this dog, having her jump through hoops and stuff. They're just like tossing treats at her all day. But let's see how she does. What we're going to look for is, does she lose enthusiasm or does she give up if I go on a thin schedule? So this will be, I'll give it to her like 1 out of 3 times, all right? 1 out of 3 times. But your goal in phase 1 is to thin out, is to see how much you can thin out a ratio, a reward schedule, while still keeping the enthusiasm from the dog. So let's see what we get here. Darcy, Darcy, come. Good girl. That was Darcy, sit. Good girl. Darcy, down. Good girl. Darcy, climb. Good girl, right? Like a 1 to 3. Darcy, come. Good girl. Oh. Good girl. Darcy, down. Good girl. Darcy, heel. Good girl. Darcy, sit. Darcy, sit. Good girl. See, you're getting frustrated. Are you barking? Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? You are? I'm sorry. Darcy, down. Good girl. Right? Darcy, sit. Good girl. I may give it to her twice in a row. It's variable. Darcy, down. Good girl. Darcy, heel. Good girl. Give it to her that time. Darcy, come. Good girl. Darcy, shake. Good girl. Darcy, speak. Good girl. Give it to her here. So this is, I'm thinning it out, all right? So that's all what that is how often can you thin it out? Now, let's see how this works with heel, all right? Heel, this is very, very useful, right? You saw how much I was giving it to her before. Watch how this thinning out the reward schedule works with heel. So I have a bunch of these, all right? And I'm going to, let's see, Darcy, heel. Good girl. Let's see. You can be fancy. You do a little bit. Good girl. So I'm going to walk around, and I'm going to actually keep her on I'm going to tell her, good girl. Good girl. Oh, what do you smell? Good girl. Treat. I'm going to, every good girl, watch this, good girl, she doesn't get it there. Good girl, she doesn't get it there. Good girl, she gets one there. I'm thinning it out. The heel, it's usually pretty easy to thin it out. Good girl. Good girl. Treat. All right, and then I may, Darcy, free. A lot of times on the duration is where I'll give her like more after she does it for a duration, all right? So that is basically how variable reward works out. Now, the last box on phase 1 training is pre-MAC principle, all right? Pre-MAC principle now is after, you mostly use this for after you finish your training sessions, right? Because you can only give a dog so much treats, and they learn really quick when you're using like food reward, or you can use the toy. But everything I now teach her in this training session, even if I'm not using punishment, positive punishment yet in phase 2, we can start utilizing it every day, just pre-MAC principle. So what is pre-MAC principle, all right? Pre-MAC principle is it's also known as grandma's law, right? Is eat your vegetables first, then you can have dessert. It's do the lesser desired behavior first in order to do the greater desired behavior. So for instance, with sit, since I know that she understands sit, now like when I take her to the school, I know she wants to get out of the car, and she's in the crate in the back. even though I don't have any food rewards, I don't have anything to really give her, I know she would rather be out of her crate than inside the crate. So now I tell her sit before I open it up. And if she doesn't sit, I don't open it up. If she sits, she's so excited she wants to get out, she'll do the lesser desired behavior of sitting. So I'll open it up so she can go out and play with her buddy Matrix, who's a German Shepherd puppy that she plays with the whole day over there. She's going to get her, she wants to meet someone. She wants to say hi. These are things you have them do something first, and then you allow them to do it. An example of Premack principles, the big German Shepherd we have here, Orfeo, he is very strong. And but he rarely, we don't have like an e-collar on him like hardly ever over here, or even the prong collar or anything. He's mostly works using Premack principle. He mostly works using Premack principle here. You see me on the camera? She's so funny, this dog. So if I bring him in the yard and he wants to rush back in to the apartment because he's hungry and he knows his breakfast is there, his dinner, he just has on a flat collar. But what happens is I ain't going to put on a prong collar, I ain't putting on an e-collar to bring him back in. But him, he is very, very strong. Simply what happens is when we take him out of the yard, he just has a buckle collar. He goes to pull, I just stop when I tell him heel. If he doesn't do a nice heel, I'm just not walking forward back to where the food is. It's Premack principle. So he knows that he's doing that behavior which he really does not want to do, but he knows it's the way to bring him to greater things. And the same thing when I come home. I come home and he's loose and he's pretty much on autopilot. He knows I'm not going to touch him until he goes and relax. He goes to his placemat, and only after he does a good duration on his placemat and I put back my bags and everything else do I then free him up and he gets love. He's on autopilot. He has nothing on him. And he pretty much does that on autopilot when anyone he knows is at the door now. He knows I'm not going to be able to say hi unless I do this. That is all Premack principle. His only reward for doing it is the behavior that he wants to do. He just does not get the gratification of that behavior if he does not do that. That is Premack principle. So everything you do in these lessons, even with a puppy, you apply it through the whole day. And you do this with a client. So these clients, they love it. You could work with them with their 7-week-old puppy, and you'll be surprised how quickly they can move. Remember, they can put these sessions right on their habitation charts. So they can do these sessions, and the sky's the limit. You can teach them anything. They can have fun. Let's say Darcy, she's not on the camera here. You can do, Darcy, she'll jump through, the students, they mark her jumping through hula hoops, they do the speak, they do that. I don't know how much she'll like rolling over in this room, but she does, I haven't done it. Which way do you roll over? Roll over, good girl. She'll do anything. They were doing play dead. Let me see. Darcy, they shaped it. They went down like the bang, and then they kind of did like a partial rollover. Good girl. They marked it right there. No, you're not supposed to finish it. But the clients could do everything with that. Heel seeking, it's anything. Any way you can prompt them. Good girl. I'm moving backwards. You start this here with the treats. Good girl. I'm just like pushing her back. Phase 1 is where it's at. It's how you get people to enjoy the training, all right? This is enjoyable. You do some of this and you take out the toy and then you have her sit for the toy and do things and do things for the toy. It's all in the phase 1 training, all right? So this is just kind of like an overview of phase 1 training. And so where you can go, let's go back over here. Click on here. See, this is everything here. So remember, the place you go is you can go on here. Now watch this. Eventually these are going to be updated. The trainers that that do the full one-on-one apprenticeships with me, or anyone who's really loving this and wanted to go that complete route, basically what they do is that's what they break down. You know, they do lessons where they teach what marking is, they teach what fading is. What I did here is I took the Teresa videos, I just went down for sit, did it for sit, and you could click on here for marking, and it pretty much explains what I was talking about. In the Teresa videos, you will see she runs through them all really quick. But what I do is I just break down and explain in each of these sections, you know, just what that part is. Just what that part is. And the same thing, just what the interval is, just what the duration is, just what the variable reward, just what the Premack principle part is. All right? So that's an overview. And what we'll do next time is we can do, well, we'll think about it. We'll either go into the phase 2 or maybe we'll do, I think it'll be in our best interest to do a little classical conditioning lesson, which is not that hard at all. But phase 2 is really next. And you'll see phase 2 makes so much more sense. It's so easy. You're going to enjoy training your dog, teaching the dog punishment. What happens is punishment, positive punishment, ends up just helping the dog. They see it as help. It doesn't become this really scary thing. When it comes to punishment, Darcy, good girl. Even with this flat collar on Darcy, like now if she goes to get off of this, right, technically the punishment, even with this, I'm just pumping this, it helps her. Good girl, all right? That's technically punishment, right? I'm adding something. I don't like using the buckle collars. It's not really good for their neck for punishment. But even this little pumping, it's helping her. That's punishment. I added it to discourage her from getting off. I took it away to encourage her for staying on. And now everything else is still phase 1. So you never get rid of phase 1. We just start adding phase 2 to it, and phase 2 just helps them out, all right? Most of your communication with the dog is phase 1 based. You're teaching them new things, and then you kind of the phase 2, the positive punishment, negative reinforcement, it drops in there really quick to help. And then you're back into the good stuff, right? You're keeping them with rewards, and life is good. As long as she's doing the last thing that I told her, the world is a really great place. She's getting love. Usually if I have her on the leash, I'm not talking to everyone. She's getting more attention. So as long as she's there, she's a good girl. If I told her to go on the climb and she went to get off, since she likes being up here and she's going to know this is where the good things happen, she may be on a very, very spread out interval. I'll still give her a treat every once in a while. If she goes to get off, punishment is so minimal, and already she's not even getting off as easy, you see? And this dog really, believe me, she needs some punishment. You need punishment. I'm dying to give you some punishment sometimes. But she doesn't really, what you see here, she just did a little bit of a session with me, and just a little touch of punishment makes her so much more solid. She's staying on there. And all I did was take a finger with her little pink flat collar and did that to her. Darcy, free! You were such a good girl. I think you deserve a rest now. All right. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? It looks like I may have been able to make this one in under an hour for you guys. But let me know if you have any questions on the phase 1. And I'll answer them for you. Change my camera. It looks like the camera's worked in here. We didn't get cut off. Okay, Ryan's typing. See Dave typing. I love phase 1. Looks good. Thank you, Jerry. Talking about my haircut? Good girl. No questions is good. That means we're following some good ABA. Nice little easy things that are easy to understand. Training is a lot of easy things in the right order. You's a good girl. You's a good girl. She's so happy when she's training. Ryan says, Mike, with phase 1, I saw you were saying Darcy climb or Darcy heel, and she didn't at first. You repeated the name again as opposed to no heel, or a small correction with heel. Good. Okay, good question, Ryan. The reason why I did that is because no is technically a punishment. All right? So, and we'll learn about that in phase 2. No becomes like, it's the opposite. Like good girl is a marker for love, treats, good things to come. No is a marker that's associated with punishment. So in phase 2, we start that. So what happens is no. If in phase 1, if they do not do it, I just repeat it until they get it, then I mark it, let them know that was the right thing. And that's when I'm doing pure phase 1, that's what I'm doing. Now phase 2, technically no is phase 2, because no, I never use a physical punishment with no. But no is followed through with punishment. So like in the case with her, right, if she's getting tired, she was kind of going for like 45 minutes. Darcy, climb, good girl. If I do use the word no, let's see if we could kind of be unfair to her. She's gonna, you know what I'm trying to do, right? If she gets off, I would tell her N-O. I don't even like to say it around her because she's being very intuitive. She's trying to pay attention. After I would say it, I would use a physical punishment. In this case, with her, when she wants to do the right thing, I could use my pinky with her, right? I would go no. Then it gets followed through with a punishment. I literally use my pinky, good girl, all right? So then what happens is no is associated with, okay, that was wrong, and now I'm going to get punished. So then after a while, let's see, no. All right. Then the punishment, all right? No is phase 2. So we will do that. We're going to do that soon. Good girl, Darcy, free. But when I'm just doing phase 1, I'm not using the word no, but no comes next. So I have the clients avoid using the word no until they know how to use good girl, and they know how to really maximize how to encourage the dog. They understand the power of how to encourage a dog to do the right things. Then no is good. Punishment, I love punishment because it helps them to be right more, to get more rewards, and it does not have to be harsh. But so important for those clients to master phase 1 first. Let's see. The camera, LOL. Oh, I know. I was joking, Jerry. That was all. Thanks, Mike. Dave says, yes. How in the world are you able to let one move out of position like that? If I let mine slide one time now, it takes me days to overcome it. Depending on the task, most are in phase 3. Take sit. If I let them up once without a verbal release, they take it as okay to do next time. So we'll get into that. And that's all about punishment, all right? So it's punishment schedules need to be, and you got to know why is your dog doing every exercise. In here, because she knows she's getting rewards, she's mainly motivated to do it because she does want the rewards right now. If your dog is doing something and their main motivation is based off of they have to do it because you said so and it's punishment based, punishment, yes, you're right. Punishment must be on a continuous punishment schedule, meaning they need to at least think that punishment will 100% happen if they break. And if it always 100% happens, then they don't break and they get punished less. So they're polar opposites, right? So with rewards, we're looking to be a slot machine, right? How many times are we going to do a behavior of putting money to a slot machine that we don't like to do before we get a reward? we get variably reward. It's very, very powerful variable reward systems. So, those work. But with punishment, think of like a candy machine. You put like $1 into a candy machine like twice or even once and no candy comes out, we don't repeat that behavior. If nothing's really coming, coming out of it. Or like with speeding tickets. I say like speeding tickets are a good example, right? We speed a lot because we don't get punished often. We get variably punished, so we're gonna brake. But those red lights, those red lights that have the cameras, we never run those because we know we will always get punished. So continuous punishment schedules, yeah, you don't let it slide. It does not mean we're there physically punishing. We actually punish the dog very little when we're on continuous punishment schedules. But punishment only works best if you're paying attention to your reward schedules too. You should always have your dog on a reward schedule. It could be something as simple as praising your dog and going over and giving your dog love. You need to know what that dog is motivated by. Or it could be you go over and give that dog a reward, even a little treat, once every 15 minutes, once every 20 minutes. And you'll be surprised how much it helps those long downstays. But we will get into the punishment. But punishment works best when it has the other side, the other side, which is the reward schedules. And some people, a problem I would have with a lot of my clients is I would teach them how to do rewards. I'd be like, you need to do this before I show you how to do punishment. And then once they learned how to do the punishment, they forgot about the rewards. Everything was just about having the dog do it. And they would praise the dog, but they would forget about love the dog every so often, throwing a treat every so often. Always pay attention and be aware of what your dog's reward schedule is to keep them motivated. Let's see. Anything else? Anything else? You want to see Judy? I got Judy in here doing my camera work, fancy camera work. It's good. You never did it before. All right. I guess I'm gonna sign out then for tonight. Remember, you could check out that page. It's obedience chart in the knowledge base. I'll be back Saturday. I should be back Saturday. All right, cool. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your patience. All right, I'll see everyone Saturday. Oh, thanks, Kevin. You're welcome. Good, thank you. All right, good night, Jerry. Good night, everybody. Have a good night.